I think this is entirely justified in view of the damage it's going to cause. She is going to need to find not just the what, but the how. This could be Kemi Badenoch's USP. I'm Annabel Denham, and today I'm diving into some of the most compelling reader responses to my latest article, in which I explore some of the criticisms which have been levelled against Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, ask how justified they are, and set out what I believe could be a plan for her to take on Nigel Farage and neutralise the reform threat. We begin with a comment from David Eden. "I'm leaning towards reform at the moment," he says, "but I'm not keen on their economics. Badenoch should emphasise the Tories' free market credentials to differentiate herself from reform. That's their best chance." Now, where I agree with David is that the Tories should indeed rediscover their free market credentials, although I'm afraid we didn't see much of that over the last 14 years that they were in power. I also agree with David that I'm not keen on Reform's economic agenda either. It seems to be that despite Farage's previous talk of wanting to turn Britain into Singapore on Thames, he's actually becoming, and his party is becoming, very interventionist on economics, and we've seen that with their stance on the two-child benefit cap. We've seen that with his position on nationalising utilities, all of which is going to come at a huge cost to the British taxpayer, and all of which continues the economic policies of the last couple of decades, the ones which have seen the debt soar, the ones which have seen us experience very little growth in GDP, and ultimately has failed to deliver an improvement, significant improvement in living standards. The next question is from John Bull, who says, "Badenoch obviously thinks a ban on doctor strikes would be popular, and she might well be right. But how would a ban be enforceable without doctors simply leaving the NHS and the UK? Sounds like fantasy politics." So John is referencing an announcement made by the Tory leader over the weekend that she would follow the lead, the example set by some European countries, and implement a ban on doctors being able to go on strike. I think this is entirely justified in view of the damage it's going to cause and the misery and suffering that it'll inflict upon patients who are on often very, very lengthy waiting lists. The question around doctors leaving the UK is a really interesting one, because if you look at polls, it certainly suggests that there's a strong sense of disillusionment among many medics and that they are considering going overseas. But I do think we need to take these polls with a fistful of salt. Ultimately, it's my view that we have a broken healthcare system, the problem being that it's nationalised and funded by general taxation. That means that we don't have a functioning labour market in healthcare, which means that it's very difficult for doctors to improve their own position and get higher pay, perhaps if they went into specialties where there's greater demand but very low supply of doctors, or move to areas where there are doctor shortages. So that might be a way that they could improve their lot, but unfortunately that's not the sort of thing that the British Medical Association would countenance. So we are in a situation where we need the government to get tough with the unions and stand up to the doctors and be very clear that it isn't acceptable to expect these massive pay increases on top of the 29% they've already been offered. Mike Simons. Kemi Badenoch's only chance is to go full-on Thatcherism. I agree with Mike, and I wrote a column to that effect a few weeks ago. Now, part of this is the electoral maths and the fact that Kemi is going to need to hold on to that 16-17% of voters who do believe in Thatcherism, and she could use that as a base from which to grow and find other policies that might appeal to other voters who are out there. I also believe that we need some party in British politics today that does believe in a smaller state, and lower taxes and more personal responsibility and less government interventionism, because we're not getting that from Labour, we're not getting that from Reform, we're indeed not going to get it from the Liberal Democrats or the Green Party either, and yet I believe that this is the medicine that the country needs. Now, it's quite clear that Farage is trying to appeal to more red wall type voters who believe in nationalism and economic interventionism. So this could be Kemi Badenoch's USP, not to mention the fact that in the aftermath of the Thatcher administrations, we saw a massive amount of growth and improvement in the economy and prosperity. And so they have got that track record to fall back on. And lastly, a comment from Claire Kuthther. I like Kemi, but she is backing the wrong horse. The Conservatives aren't conservative. She can't be a Conservative on her own. She needs the rest of the party to be on side. They aren't. One of Kemi's biggest challenges when she became leader of the Conservative Party was how she would unite it. Your comments coming at an interesting time because Kemi has just released a memo which features her blueprint for authentic conservatism, in which she talks about things like freedom and being pro-enterprise and individual autonomy. And these are really important noble principles. But she is going to need to find not just the what, but the how. How would a Conservative government implement those principles when you've got activist judges and you've got a politicised civil service? And it strikes me that she is doing the groundwork here that's required in order that she can prove to the electorate that she does have the answers, the solutions to what is currently ailing the country. But she doesn't just have to persuade the public, she's got to persuade her party as well, and that seems to be an equally large challenge. Thank you to everyone who took the time to read and comment. Your voices contribute to healthy debate. Keep the comments coming, and we will try and respond to as many of you as possible.